afternoon, everyone. It is March the 28th. Welcome to probably the final sports note of the month. Um, in a tournament that has been the most unpredictable, littered with more upsets than we've ever seen, for the third year in a row of 15 making the elite. I'm sorry, 15 getting out of the first round, and then also the second year in a row when 15's made the Elite Eight. We actually saw Creighton and um, Princeton's Cinderella run on Friday night, and now we've got the Final Four set, and we had four pretty good games over three of the four were good. Florida Atlantic upsetting Kansas, getting to their first Final Four. We saw UConn absolutely stomp Gonzaga, and UConn looks like the favorite to win the whole thing right now. Then we actually had those were the two Saturday games. The Sunday games, however, were a little bit different. They were both very good games, but they were both mired in controversy towards the end. And the one that we're going to focus in on is the closer of the two games that was a little bit more of a coin flip. And that was the San Diego State and Creighton game early on Sunday afternoon, and that would have been the South Regional Final. San Diego State in the Elite Eight, Creighton in the Elite Eight for the first time since 1941, when the NCAA only had 8 teams going, and Creighton lost in the first round that year. Keep in mind that Wisconsin won the national championship that year by only scoring 39 points. But then again, with the fact that this game ended 57-56, it's not too far away from, the fact that they were that there was no 3-point line. Who knows if the foul penalty even was a thing back then. There was certainly no shot clock. I'm not even sure if the game was 40 minutes at that point. But this was a game that went back and forth, back and forth. Creighton jumped out by 8 in the first half. San Diego State comes back and trims it to 5 at the half, and then outscores Creighton 29-23 in the second half. But it was how they did it. San Diego State would jump out to a lead. Creighton would actually trim it down. Creighton would take a short lead. This game went back and forth the entire second half. But it was the aspect that when fouls normally would be called during the game, the officials typically put the whistles away at the end and just let the kids play. This time, the officials did the opposite. Both teams only had 11 personal fouls in this game, and I think only one San Diego State player had 4 fouls, and I don't think anybody on Creighton. I do actually take that back. Parrish for San Diego State had 4 fouls, and Trey Alexander for Creighton had 4 fouls. However, even though Alexander had 4 fouls, there was one that was not called against him that really started to put wheels in motion here as to really how bad of an ending this turned out to be, for how great of a game it started out. And Alexander was in the backcourt. San Diego State was certainly not playing full court press. They were playing man-to-man, and Alexander essentially got grabbed from behind and ended up suffering a hand injury that kept him out for several minutes. The call was not made. The officials allowed the game to play on, and the Creighton faithful, and trust me, there were a lot of them, because this game was taking place in Louisville. So Louisville to Omaha, not nearly as far as San Diego State to Louisville. And then again, that call's not made. Alexander has to sit for several minutes with the hand injury. Ryan Kalkbrenner ends up getting a cut on his elbow. Was not called, and then Kalkbrenner, ironically enough, was whistled for. Originally, it was ruled on the floor as a foul underneath on the offensive glass, where San Diego State then actually was starting to head up the court. But then the call was upgraded to a flagrant 1, with Creighton leading by 5 at this point. And the ruling was that Kalkbrenner would essentially be was nailed for the hook and hold that they've really clamped down on this year throughout college basketball, let alone just the recent tournaments. And then this turned into the player that Creighton that San Diego State ended up going to the line. I believe was only shooting 64% for the season. Drilled both free throws, and then San Diego State converts. And now from a 5-point game, this is just a 1-point game. And then this is really where the momentum of the entire final 6-7 minutes took place. It was something where for Creighton, all of their scoring came from their starters. They did have 4 other players coming off the bench, but they only played 3, 4, and 6 minutes respectively. And where San Diego State got 12 points out of their bench because they didn't get a whole lot of production out of 2 guys in their lineup that's 2 of their starters that played at least 20 minutes. Both teams had 37 rebounds, and that was contributing a lot, but that was attributed, I should say, a lot more because both teams were absolutely horrendous from 3. Creighton was only 2 of 17. Do the math, that's 11.8%. San Diego State was 3 of 13, and that was only 23%. So, Creighton was 10 of 11 at the line, which would be expected because Creighton is one of the best free throw shooting teams in the entire nation. I want to say they're certainly in the top 10% of all the teams in the country. San Diego State was 4 of 6 because a lot of these personal fouls towards the end were offensive fouls where not a whole lot of guys got to the line, but it was the one at the end that everyone is talking about, and that was guard Ryan Nembhard fouling Darian Trammell for San Diego State. The foul was warranted. Nembhard did grab the jersey to an extent on the way up. Did not make contact with Trammell's hand, but the thing is that it was with 1.2 seconds remaining. It did not alter the shot, and this is something where the whistles should have been put away. You had put them away the entire game before, and this is not sounding like sour grapes because I actually was a fan of Creighton growing up, still follow them a little bit. I don't have anything against San Diego State. I did not have a dog in the race. All of my teams have long since been eliminated with how topsy-turvy this was. But this is certainly something I would have liked to have seen Creighton get there because San Diego State did have themselves quite a bit of a run a few years ago. Excuse me. And it would have been really nice to see a Creighton Florida Atlantic national semifinal because now you've got Miami and UConn on the other half of the bracket, and UConn being one of the few blue bloods, but they haven't really been in this position in a number of years. Miami also making their first Final Four. So again, 3 teams making their first Final Four appearance ever, whereas UConn's got several national championships, none of which really, I believe, in the last decade. But the fact of when you now go over to the other game as well, where Texas was leading Miami by 13, and then a lot of controversial foul calls let Miami right back into this game, and Miami turns a 13-point deficit into a 7-point win to reach Houston and match up with UConn, and there's going to be your national champion right there, whoever ends up winning that game, because I don't see where either Florida Atlantic or San Diego State can take down Miami or UConn and be the little engine that could that Butler was or Gonzaga was before Butler actually turned into a powerhouse for a little while about a decade ago, and like Gonzaga's been for the last decade after Butler kind of came back down to earth. But this is going to be a very, very interesting Final Four for who's there, although I do feel it's going to be rather anticlimactic of a Final Four, again, because of who's there. You've got a 4, 2 5s, and a 9 in the Final Four. It is the first time since they started seeding the tournaments and the teams in 1979 that a 4 seed was the highest one to go, And then if you also think about how had the whistles been put away as they should have been, you would have seen a 2-5, a 6 and a 9. Um, and Creighton and Florida Atlantic, I thought would have been a much better game. I'm not sure why they decided to pull that back. And the other aspect of that is that after all of that happened, and San Diego State hits the back end of the two-shot foul after Trammell missed the first one, that there were still 1.2 seconds left on the clock, and Creighton didn't have any timeouts, so they could not take the timeout and advance the ball to half court, where it would have been a much better ending. The ball was thrown 90 feet, essentially baseline to baseline. Two players go up and get it. Ball lands out of bounds. Replay on the baseline and also the overhead TV cam both show that there should have been 3/10 of a second left in the game, and then the officials wave it off, say the game is over, and we're still waiting on a proper explanation from the officiating. None more so than Creighton head coach McDermott, who's been there a number of years, and remember also coached his son during Creighton's run about 10 years ago, when it was Doug McDermott. The idea that you can just wave off 3/10 of a second when the NCAA rules state that zero point 0.3 seconds is enough time for a catch and shoot, where Creighton would have retained possession. So essentially, not only did the officiating take the game away from the players by whistling that foul when it really should have been put away. It was a foul, yes, but in that situation, you cannot make that call unless that player is absolutely getting murdered. And then secondly, you take the game out of the Creighton players' hands by not having the opportunity for that catch and shoot. Now, if it was something that, San Diego State would have had possession, you throw the ball into the backcourt or just, touch it and it's over. But for Creighton, you've got the lob, you've got the catch and shoot opportunity. It's definitely something that they should have been allowed to play for and never got the opportunity. Again, this is one of those calls that we're still going to be waiting to figure out what in the hell happened, what was the reasoning for, because the NCAA gave a statement. There was no follow-up report or something from the officials, kind of like what they do in the NBA for explanations of that. You're never going to hear the NCAA admit that their officials got the call, flat out wrong, where, quite honestly, San Diego State should have been flying back home to California, closing up their lockers, and Creighton should have been taking the short drive to get ready to match up on Saturday night against Florida Atlantic. So let me know what you guys think. What did you think of the call? Should it have been made? Is this hopefully I should say, consequently, this hopefully should not be a sign of what we've got going on with the national semifinals on Friday and then the national championship coming up on Monday. Again, although I don't see Monday's national championship being a scenario where the officials are really going to take hold of the game, because I think whoever wins that Miami-UConn game, I don't want to say they're going to wipe the floor with San Diego State or Florida Atlantic, but it's really not going to be as close of a final as some of the more recent years have been. I think it's going to resemble a little bit more of the Baylor over, Gonzaga, than certainly a Villanova over North Carolina, or the championship game we had just a year ago with Kansas. But again, let me know what you guys think. We are actually 1 week away from starting up the bi-weekly Wise Guys Sports Show, so we'll actually have more information on that. We'll let you guys know if we're going to be changing times, if it's going to be starting at 9, if it's going to be at 8, but we will let you know. And there also might be something in the pipe for this fall. We're not going to spoil anything here. We might allude to it early on, during that Wednesday show. But I think it's something that you guys are really going to enjoy. And again, I will be back with you guys hopefully here a little later on this week, maybe this weekend. But have yourself a great rest of your week as well. Take care.